And I mean, you could even sort of catch people like this little group still sort of wandering through and having a look, and probably somebody's told them this is District 6. And I think one of them is probably the driver, the guy in the white shirt, and the other 4 are visitors who are having a look.
So that the area is still of interest.
Good morning.
Hi. Are we in the way?
You're not in the way at all. We're just, my name's Sue Williamson. This is Idrissa Shah, who was a resident of District 6, and we're here just doing a documentary about District 6 and about Idrissa's house, which stood right over there.
But I'm sure you can share a story with these ladies.
So I was born on this piece of land, and I lived here till I was about 19. And the area became a white area, and we were forced out into a township. Sue was one of the artists many years ago who came into the area, and she met my mother, who was fighting to try and preserve the area.
We were part of Friends of District 6. We were trying to get important people in Cape Town to sign a petition to try to stop the rest of District 6 being demolished. But at the same time, I was making an artwork, and I was gathering large pieces of rubble from the demolition sites and storing them. And then for the exhibition, it was called The Last Supper, I brought it all to the middle of a gallery in the middle of Cape Town called the Garlet Gallery. We stacked all these objects up, the door frames, the baths, the books, the lumps of plaster, the window frames. Naz lent me her 6 dining room chairs. We put the dining room chairs around the rubble. I'd made a tape of people talking about District 6.
And I was born in District 6, and I want to die out of District 6.
We draped the chairs in white to indicate that people were having to leave. So now we're just, Manly Villa was, oh, it's this manhole. Do you remember this manhole from those days?
We used to play around it.
I remember now saying 30 years. I've been living in this house for 30 years. We were standing in the road when she was saying that, and she was throwing bread to the pigeons and wondering who was going to feed the birds.
And now I find myself, 40 years later, and it's evoking so many deep emotional moments for me, actually. And I remember, I remember my father, and him just having to bear the knowledge that there was nothing he could do. One of the things that I do remember, Sue, was after the house was demolished, you took a shot almost in the same
Yes, I did.
position of...
But that was in 2008, so it was 20 years later and still...
Same.
I'm just imagining that I'm standing in Rochester Road and Naz is leaning on the wall of her house.
Yeah, kind of here.
Yeah, she's leaning like that. And next door to Naz, there was this house that was being knocked down, and there was a man standing there with his little demolition hammer. And she was kind of looking slightly that way. She didn't want to see him.
Sure, looking away from it.
Yeah.
The history tends to be thought of in a very linear trajectory, almost as if you can count the ages going forward. But memory is something that is quite different to that. It feels much more circular. Every time that something is remembered, it is changed. And every time that it is remembered, it has a different effect. For me, I think this is where the power of Sue's practice is.
When I think of Sue's practice, I think of the meticulousness of her research, I think of the rigour of her process, and I think of the deep respect that she has for the participants who she works with over years, but decades as well. It's sort of natural to me that her practice would become cyclical in that way, because such is the depth of her engagement that, of course, she would want to know, how is life for you now?
We decided to make a new tape, and Idrissa contacted a group of people who'd lived in that area. It's called the Dry Docks area in District 6, and asked them if they'd like to come and share their memories. And we set up a recording session. That was another remarkable occasion.
The community was so close that Idrissa gave up her bedroom, and my parents lived there for the first few months of the marriage. So that just goes to show how tight the community was. They just had a different mindset. They were very kind, and loving, and they're gone now. They all passed away, and I lost them all in a few years. And you're never going to, I'm never going to experience that again. So, to be quite frank, I cry for them every day. That's it. And they're my people. And even though I was small, and I don't remember much of it, all of it, I think it's important that we keep that. That's why I came, because what you're doing is very important for the community, because they're going to live on only now in memory.
The sound recordings are really interesting, like thinking about quotation and voice in Sue's work. When we showed the Lost District at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, the installation, which is a wall-based installation, also included a sound accompaniment, which was the recorded oral testimonies that Sue collected when she was involved with women's movement for peace in the 1970s. So you can hear a wedding singer, you can hear the call to prayer, and then also you can hear bulldozers.
I've just fallen in love with a brick. I feel like putting on some margarine and chewing that brick, because it means so much to me to see that bricks are being torn down, crushed by the bulldozer, and that's the memory we have.
This would have also been part of my my bedroom windows.
Your
view.
bedroom windows.
Yeah.
The Lost District. I've taken old photographs of District 6 and engraved them into glass. If you were living in District 6 still, you might have looked out of the window and seen the row of houses opposite, and that would have been your view. But now it's just a disengaged window that, in a sense, has been blown out of its frame and is drifting across.
Justice can never be served or done what we've went through, the trauma and experience that we went through. No restitution can compensate for that injustice that we suffered at the time. It was not just buildings and houses, it was homes. It was our homes, we lived it.
The image has been engraved in, but in installation, the light shining on it, you don't actually see the engraving. What you see is a sharp grey shadow on the wall that's just ephemeral. In 1993, District 6 just looked like a bomb site in that grass had grown over things. The large pieces of rubble weren't there anymore. It was all just kind of smooth and grassy. And I started digging around and I found all these things just under the surface, things like electric plugs, china cups, rice packets, things that had been left behind in the demolitions, the small things, not the large things that I had before. And I had the idea of setting these little objects into little resin casts. It's like a memento. I did some by streets. I'd pick up everything in Constitution Street, for instance, and then I'd set these little blocks up and I'd make a museum case, 22 little blocks with fragments of stuff that I'd picked up on that street. Andrew Lamprecht is curating the show at Iziko, the retrospective, and one of the first things that he said to me was that he would like me to reflect on that early work, The Last Supper, which he saw. I thought, well, let me start, where are those chairs? And I was thinking I might have to make a facsimile of them, and Idrissa said, no, she knew where the chairs were, they were in storage, and I'd be welcome to borrow them. So that was the beginning, these 6 chairs, which had been for so long their family chairs in their home in Manley Villa. This one isn't bad, Megan, this one here. We took the chairs up there. We had tea. All the family celebrations had centered around this dining room with these chairs.
Yeah, so facing this way.
Rochester Road, which was the road where Manley Villa stood, is still there.
Got it. Thank you.
It's slabs with little stones in. There's grass growing between the stones. I decided that it would be interesting to try and recast versions of those stones for the installation and have those in the middle of the gallery. They would be mediated by having little bits of brick and other things coming up amongst the stones, as if there were things trying to grow through those. And then the chairs would sit on top of that, and you'd hear the voices of the people talking, remembering.
But I remember my brother-in-law, Nifa, had to fetch me, and he said something to me, don't look back. Just follow me, just walk down the stairs, get into the car, even while we were leaving the house for the last time. Even though I had this deep urge to look back, I actually took his words and I looked ahead, and it's probably saved me many times in my life, just having to look ahead and never to glance back.
One of the things the exhibition does, I think, is present in a very accessible way, in a very aesthetic way, a way of looking at South Africa and understanding it.
A journalist has to tell a story according to the facts, but art has a way of being able to mediate those facts. You're not tied in the same way as a documentarian is. Sometimes there's that wonderful moment in which you discover a new way of looking at something.
I think the noise generated by the crowds is one of the things that's most heartening in having this exhibition at the National Gallery. I think bring it on. Let's have all the voices together. Let's have the conversations. Sue's inviting us with that. This is a space for dialogue and for learning from each other.
So you know this is bigger than you and I.
It is bigger than you and
We
I.
speak for the voices of maybe 40,000, 50, 60,000 people who once lived here, you know. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap all. Before I break down in tears.